test him if you can actually trust him with your car, right? So you just want to test him, and you ask him a question like, do you know anything about engines? Could you tell me how an engine works? And you probably get an answer like quite quickly. He can tell you in a nutshell, what is an engine? How does it work? What is its operating basis? What are the principles behind it? Because he knows engines. All right, now let's say you ask him another question. You say, you know what, my car is like having these hiccups kind of thing, you know, it's like very hard to get going. Could you trace the root cause? Could you tell me what makes that happen? What is causing this phenomenon? And he will say, yeah, sure, I'll run some diagnostics, and I'll probably find out in no time. Now, so he finds out what is the root cause of the problem, and then you would ask him, can you fix this? In other words, can you bring it back in the desired condition? And he can. In other words, so you're going to ask him, what is an engine? How does it work? What is the root cause of the problem? Can you improve the condition and bring it into a desirable condition? And you're going to get 3 times a yes. Good. So now let's do that for the mind. We're going to approach a mental health expert, quote unquote, and we ask this person, what is the mind? How does it work exactly? So now you say, okay, so I got ADHD, or I got ADD, or I'm bipolar, or I'm manic, or I'm depressed, or, you know, just give it a label and just say, you know, just like everybody else on planet Earth, I'm just sabotaging my own life. What causes this? What is the root cause of my own destructive behavior? What is it that holds me back? What is it that limits my potential? Can you tell me? Now you're going to ask him, okay, good, so can you fix it? In other words, what is the mind? How does it work? What is the root cause of the problem? Can you fix it? So now I'm going to ask you guys, how many people do you think can answer these 3 questions? How many people can answer these 3 questions satisfactorily? Like knowing the mind, knowing what is the problem, knowing how to fix it, and actually fix it, just like the mechanic. What do you guys think? I'm very curious what you guys think. Is there anybody on planet Earth that actually knows what is the mind, what holds you back, what limits your potential, what causes you all these issues and problems, and also can tell you how to fix it? Do you think there's anybody there? Kyle said, yes, indeed. Okay, all right. I'm just going to zip on my drink for a moment. I'm very curious about your answers. Just put something in the chat. If it's nobody in your mind, just put nobody. If you think, yes, it could be known, all right, somebody. All right, Darren says previous bad, poor experiences. All right, good. Thank you, Darren. So, give me just 30 seconds to see if there's any more answers. Igor says, rewathing. Rewathing. Igor, you have to fill me in on that. I'm afraid my English is too limited to understand that word, actually. I'm afraid I have to look it up. Good. So tonight, this is the topic. How are your memories stored and where? Yeah. I'm going to be using this book, guys. This is an international bestseller. It's called Dianetics, the Modern Science of Mental Health. Dianetics means through the mind. It's a book by L. Ron Hubbard. This is actually the forerunner of Scientology. Now, how did that whole thing come about? It's a book on the mind. It tells you exactly what is the mind. It's giving you a manual, basically. It tells you what is the mind, how does it work, how does it limit your potential, hold you back, and how do you fix it? How did that come about? Mr. Hubbard himself, he was an engineer. He studied quantum physics, and he was very interested if thoughts actually contained energy. And he set out to do some measurements on it, made some discoveries, and then ran over, so to speak, to the psychology department and to brief people on his discoveries. And he said, "Can anybody explain to me what is the mind and how does it work?" And he found out nobody knew. So he decided he had to start from scratch and find his own answers, and just figure out by doing research how the mind actually did work. And he did a lot of research. He funded his own research. He made tremendous breakthroughs and discoveries, and that's all culminated in that book, Dianetics, the Modern Science of Mental Health. So I'm going to give you some snippets of that book tonight. So let's just start with a quick drill. Now, the first thing I'm going to ask you to do, just as a little exercise, right? What I would like you to do is just to think back of primary school. We're probably all adults here, so maybe you can think back of primary school. And when I say primary school, let's have a look at, for example, the building itself. Let's have a look at the classroom. Let's see if we can find the blackboard. Let's see if we can find the teacher's desk, the windows, the door, the entrance to the room. Maybe we can actually have a look outside and see the playground, the courtyard, the place where you would go out and have your breaks and do some play. Now, so okay, Igor, I got you. You're English. So, quick question. Now that I mentioned primary school, the classroom, outdoors, who of you actually had some pictures flashing by? Just some snippets, some pictures, some images. In other words, who was able to obtain some memories of this? Maybe memories of the classroom, memories of the playground, the courtyard, memories of the building itself, maybe the colors, maybe its dimensions, maybe the blackboard, the teacher's place. All right, good. So Kyle, yes, vivid images. Darren, yes. Okay, Nan, yes, I can. That is fantastic. Very good, Nan. I love it. Debs, yes, everything. Good. Okay, so everybody got pictures, yeah? Good. So this is the first observation. Our mind has pictures. Now, we're going to take that to the next level. All right? Let's take it to the next level. What I want you to do is imagine that you are sitting in your favorite chair in the living room in the house where you grew up as a child or a teenager. Just imagine again, you're sitting in that favorite chair. Maybe you have more than one, but just pick one. Just select one chair and imagine again that you're sitting in that chair in the living room in the house where you grew up. Now I'm assuming that you are already there, and maybe you can already have a look around and see what was in that room. Now let's find some objects in the room. The first thing I want you to find is the TV. Where was the TV? Now, just a funny exercise for you. You know, it's fun to do. Please do it. You're going to get to see in a minute or two what we're trying to achieve here. But let's imagine you're sitting here and you have your TV over there. Just point it out for you. Just point out, where's the TV? Where is it positioned from you? Right? So in my case, I had a TV like over there, and I'm talking about 40 years ago. Big square wooden cabinet, right? With knobs on the right hand side, and it had it was this tube TV, right? Like sitting like 3 meters away from me on a dresser. On a dresser with 3 drawers. Right? And I could see that it had these brass handles. So maybe when you're going through that, when you have these pictures there of the living room, maybe get some extra details. Now, if you got the TV, let's find a table. Any table, and just point it out. Just point it out from where you're sitting. So, okay, well, I got a table right there in front of me. Most of you guys probably have a table right in front of you. Now, let's have a look at that table, and let's see what are its dimensions. What is the shape? How high or low is that table? What is the color? Right? Did it have a little cover on the table? Did it have a remote control or a vase or plant or something like that on it? And how far away was it from you? So if you got that, let's find a window, any window. Maybe there's more than one window, but let's find a window in the room. And again, let's point out that window. So I would have, for example, for me, we had a pretty big room. I would have like a big window, like 5 meters away from me, right? A huge one. And that window had curtains. So let's see in your case, what do you have in front of the window? Did it have blinds? Did it have curtains? If it was curtains, if so, what was the color? What was the texture? What was the fabric? All right, now finally, let's find a door. Let's just find a door. Let's find out where it is. In my case, it was behind me. Just go out, just again, go ahead and point it out. Where would it be? Do that for yourself. And have a look. What's the color of the door? What is the color? Right, how high is it? What kind of dimensions? Now, so I'm going to ask you again, who actually was able to do this? Who actually got pictures here? Pictures of the living room with all the objects in there. Kyle, yes, okay, fantastic. Very good. Who else? Who else got pictures of the living room? All right, Halima, I still remember. Okay, that's great. None, yes, fantastic. Good, Debs, very good. Also a yes. Lovely, guys. Nice. Okay, I think that's the final answer. All right, so now let's see, how does this work, yeah? Let's do a little sketch here. I hope you can see that my markers, they really need to be renewed again. So that would be a body, okay? Let's see, my black is better, I hope, not sure. So this is your mind. Your mind makes pictures. It's like you know, like these movie reels that we used to have in the past, and you got that footage on a reel, right? However, that footage is like two-dimensional. That's like a two-dimensional, like a dia, picture by picture by picture by picture on that footage, which is, you know, going onto that machine and then projected onto the screen, right? Now, similarly, your pictures, your mental images, these are stored also on a timeline, all right? From present time, nicely going back to the past. And we can call them mental images. So we call them mental images. All right, now what is so fascinating about these images? Let's just imagine again that we're in that living room, and some of you guys may have had vivid glimpses, vivid pictures, right? That you can actually see things vividly. Some people may not have had very, very sharp and vivid pictures. Some people may not have any, may not have had any pictures at all, but there was still a knowingness. There was still a recording. You would still be able to say, okay, well, we had a TV over there, we had a table over there, we had a window over there, we had a door back here. Maybe you wouldn't get any pictures, but the knowingness, knowing what you have observed, that was still recorded. And that is still recorded in your pictures. So what's the beauty? In these pictures, if your mind is in a good shape, your pictures will be very, very colorful. Your pictures have dimensions. And basically everything that you can perceive is stored in these pictures. So you would perceive the amount of light. You can remember walking into a dark alley. You can remember a very bright moment of the day. So you got darkness and light, illumination. That is one of the factors that is part or content of these pictures. You have sound. Now, you could divide sound into frequency, like a lower frequency, a higher frequency. Your mind actually distinguishes those things. So you know if you were listening to something that had a higher frequency or a lower frequency. Next to that, next to the sound, you would also have loudness. How loud was the sound, or was it close to a silence? And then even on that, when it comes to sound, so you have frequency, you have loudness, you also have beauty and ugliness. You could remember a beautiful, beautiful song, or you could remember an ugly, ugly song. And then at the same time, you would remember what kind of frequencies were involved, what kind of loudness was involved, all that. You would have temperature stored in these pictures. Now, apart from that, you also have your own body sensations, your emotions, let's say painful sensations. They're all part of these pictures. Now, what I think is the greatest thing that's in these pictures, the greatest thing here is that these pictures, these images, they're actually three-dimensional. Okay, so you're sitting in that living room, and you can look around and you can actually scan inch by inch by inch by inch the entire room, right? Just let that sink in for a moment, and you can actually imagine that you're there again, and you're going to scan the entire room inch by inch all the way around. And you can see the ceiling with its details. You can see the walls where the shadows were, where the light was, and maybe cracks in the wall. The texture of, let's say, the covers on the table and the curtains. And you can actually go into it. You'll find out you have an infinite amount of data. That will be the symbol of infinite. Yeah, it's like an 8 upside down. There's an infinite amount of data. So here's a fun fact. If you have this infinite amount of data, it's like there's like truckloads full of data. And these pictures are three-dimensional. Now I'm going to ask you, where are these pictures stored? Where do you store them? So that's my question to you guys. Please put something in the chat. Where do you store these infinite 3D pictures? Where do you store them? Kyle, in your mind. All right. Well, that's cool. Who else got an answer? Okay, Igor, I see your comment there. Chain. That's what we discussed on WhatsApp. No, not on WhatsApp, on Meetup. I got you. All right, guys. So where do we store these pictures? What do you guys think? Depths, memory. Okay, that's cool. I like that. Anybody else, any ideas on this? Where do you store these pictures? Igor says reactive bank. All right. Non-Arya says brain, midbrain. Okay. Interesting. It gets more and more and more interesting, guys. So, Nan, I'm very happy with your answer. My answer to that might actually shock you. Why is that? Were you able to pinpoint these objects in the room and say, well, you know what? The table was over there, the TV was over there, the window was over there, the door was over there. You were probably able to do so. Now, here's a fun fact. You did not say, let me see, the table is here in the middle of my brain, and then the TV is here just behind my front lobes, and then the door is in the back of my skull. I guess you didn't do that, right? Instead, you pointed about you. Okay, so there's something else going on here. There's something else going on here. It's interesting, right? I mean, I find that fascinating. So I studied engineering in the past, so I use these things with an engineering kind of viewpoint. You know, to me, it has to be sensical, logical. Otherwise, I can't think with it. But I can't think with the idea, okay, well, the TV is right there, and the table is right here, and the door is right there, and then there's a window right here. That doesn't work because you're pointing out in space. Good. So, but these are the faculties of your mind. That is what your mind is doing. And right away we see that your mind and your brain, they're two separate things. They're two distinct things. They're very distinct. They're not the same. Now, if you look at the amount of data in a single picture, the amount of data in a single picture is an infinite amount of data, right? I don't know if it's a terabyte or whatever it is, but it's an infinite amount of data. And it just comes to you like, it's right there. You just think of it and it's there. Now, what happened is that none of the psychologists and psychiatrists were actually trained in physics or in mathematics. So they had no idea about the speed of processing the data. Let's imagine that you have to process a terabyte in a microsecond. Well, the point is, your brain is way too slow to do that. If you would be pinched in your, well, let's say in your foot, it might just take a second before you realize it. And that's only a pinch. So your nervous system is not up at that level of processing speed that your mind is. In other words, there might be something else involved. So I'm going to ask you, who or what is looking at these pictures? Who or what do you think is looking at these pictures? Let me know in the chat who or what is looking at these pictures. What is looking at your memories? Who is looking at your memories? All right. So Kyle, you have a fascinating answer again. You simply say you. All right. Igor says spirit. Okay. That's a nice one. Non-self, conscious. Okay. Let's just, for the time being, let's call this mind. So, and you guys are right. You know, it is you. It is you looking at these pictures. So now we have three subjects that we can study. We can study the body. Well, not super duper interesting, unless you want to bring it up to 100 years old. But you know, on average, these things only last for 75 years. So, well, maybe you're interested in nutrition or relaxation techniques or good food or, just staying healthy, but it doesn't last too long. It's not a super fascinating thing, really. What's way more fascinating is your mind. Do you actually know that there's stuff in your mind that is holding you back? We're actually going to get to that tonight, but there's stuff in your mind that is holding you back, that is limiting your potential, that is causing you stress without you knowing where it's coming from and without you even wanting it. It's just putting that stress on you. So the mind is already more interesting than your body, because if your mind is free, well, so then you can do a lot more things, right? Now, what are you made of? That's probably very interesting. What are you really? Well, what are you? And how much better can you get? What is your full potential? These are very, very interesting questions to find out. Well, let's first of all have a look, and we find out that you are really an intelligence. You are really an intelligence. Okay, so let's say over here, you came home, right? And you had your keys, and just put your keys on the table. You put your keys on the table, and now you went to the garage, and you went to the living room, and you took a shower, and you took a nap, right? And a few hours later, you said, oh, hang on, I gotta go do some shopping. So you got all dressed, you put your coat on, you just double checked if you had your keys, and said, gosh, where's my keys? Well, you know how to use these pictures intelligently, so you just contemplate for a moment, okay, what did I do when I got home? Now your mind, your pictures will tell you what you did with your keys and where you can find them. So now, since you have these pictures, you actually know where to go to find your keys again. I could ask you, so where's your remote control? And you get a picture. Or I could ask you, well, where's your cutlery? Where's your spoon, your fork, and your knife? You say, well, it's in the drawer, Eric, and you get a picture. And so on, like I could ask you, where would you have a vase? So, all right, I got one in the cellar, right? So you got all these pictures. So by you are an intelligence, you can actually use these pictures to then find solutions which are relating to your survival, which are relating to your future computations. Okay, so you could also say you're an energy. You're an energy. And you know that. Like when you're like down, when you're like in super bad moods, gosh, do you find a body that doesn't want to cooperate with you? It just becomes sluggish, it becomes tired, it needs to rest, it needs to be fed. There's like no energy in the damn thing. That is because you endow that body with energy. So if you're very up, if you're happy, if you're cheerful, you got so much energy, you got all that positivity, you can run a mile very, very fast, most likely. That's an interesting thing. Let's say you take a twin, two athletes, the exact same DNA, and you put them on the same training regimen, and you put them on the same diet. But you're going to say, okay, they're supposed to be, like equally fast. So just before the race, you give one very, very good news, and you give the other some bad news. That energy is going to affect the body. All right, so you endow your body with energy. Okay, now, in the book Dianetics, here, it is simply called a life force. You could simply say, well, you are a life force. Let me just wipe that out. All right, you are a life force. Now, so we looked at some pictures. It's about time I'm asking you a question again. It's about time I asked you a question again. So we looked at primary school and we looked at the living room. Did any of you guys feel any kind of discomfort looking at your memories? Did any of you feel some kind of a discomfort? Maybe a certain emotion that came back to you? None, thank you, yeah. All right, Halima said happy. Debs, nope. Okay, so for none, something happened, yeah? Kaya said, okay, no, thankfully. All right, now, okay, none. So let's go into that. And so something came up, yeah? Some kind of an emotion came up. Now, let me ask you this. Let's see if you can relate to that. Maybe in school or maybe at work, at some point you had to speak in public. You had to speak in public. Or if you didn't do that, never happened to you, maybe you had to do an exam. Or maybe you went for a job interview. Or maybe you had some conversation with somebody that felt very awkward, that you didn't want to have. Just a few examples. Now, in any of these situations, like a job interview, an exam, speaking in public, did you ever feel uncomfortable and nervous? Who has experienced it? Halima says nervous, overwhelmed. All right. Okay, good. So who else? You can see me looking down. That's because I actually have my laptop here. I have to look down to see your answers. I'm very curious about your answers. So thank you very much. Kyle says absolutely. All right. Igor says fear. Okay. Debs, nervous. All right. Okay, good. So we experience this feeling tense, perhaps a knot in the stomach, this anxiety, this nervousness in these kind of occasions, right? Doing an exam or job interview, talking in public. You know, some people have it when they have to do a phone call to a person that they don't know. I used to be like that. Could be all kinds of things. Now, okay, let me ask you, do you want these feelings? So if you're nervous, if you're tense, if you're unhappy, if you have that anxious feeling all over, if you got the butterfly feeling, the anxiety stomach, the knot in your stomach, do you actually want this to happen? Halima says, okay, another answer, uncomfortable, no. All right, Deb says no, no. So we got a couple of no's here. So, what is this crazy phenomenon of feeling so awkward, feeling so tense, so nervous, and you don't even want it? That's where your mind is making a mistake. Halima says, fight or flight, indeed. That's where your mind is making a mistake. You're actually having a feeling that you don't want. You're having an emotion that you don't want. What the F is going on here? That doesn't make any sense. Your mind is doing something to you, making you feel a certain way that you don't even want. So in other words, there is something there that controls you. Let's just put this, let's just put that symbol there. Yeah, there's something there that controls you. Okay, I'm going to give you an example. You probably experienced that yourself. You had to stand up and speak in public. And there was something there that absolutely controlled your body. Your legs started to become a bit weak. You got the knot in the stomach. You start to transpire, to sweat, to smell perhaps like fear. You got a dry throat. It's like a complete sabotage of your body. Now, maybe you had some notes and you said, you know what, I'm going to just read from the paper. But you couldn't keep the paper still. You just couldn't keep it still. And people could hear it in your voice that something was not right. So there was something there sabotaging your body. But now at the same time, you kind of like went blank and you go like, what was I going to say now? Or what was I going to ask? Or how was I going to respond? Like your memory all of a sudden seemed to be sealed off. Like couldn't access your memory. Who has seen that? Who has seen that phenomenon? Like your mind shuts off and your body kind of like shuts down. And you're no longer in control. Something else controls the whole thing as if it's a sabotage. Debs, you have seen that, right? Okay, Halima says, yeah, a protective mechanism of some sort. All right, that's very good. All right, Kyle says yes. Okay, that's good, guys. Now, let me give you another example where it occurs. So here's just something that just kicks in and it starts to control you. Now, you could say like it's going on a gradient scale. So let's say that anxiety kicks in. It kicks in just a little bit and you just start to feel a bit uncomfortable. You just feel like you have a little bit of nerves here in your stomach. It turns on a bit more. In other words, it goes up the scale. It turns on a bit more. Now you start to feel kind of like afraid. You start to transpire. You start to sweat. You start to smell. The fear is servicing in you. It turns on a bit more. Now you're no longer really in control of your body. You start to become very, very weak. You have difficulties to stand up. Or it can turn on much more and you feel like you're going to faint. You're going to lose it. Let's say you have to go to a hospital for a blood test. And you imagine it's going to be so bad that you're already fainting before it even happens. Something there just turned on to the max. All right? Have you seen that? Have you witnessed that? Well, I guess you have. Now, okay, there was this. Yeah, used to hate needles. Me too, Kyle. I hate the damn things. We're on the same page here. All right, good. Now, so what is the big discovery in Dianetics? What is the biggest discovery in that book? Is that it actually tells you where that shit, that not in the stomach, and that whole damn control mechanism that prevents you from being you, that prevents you from using your potential, that causes you stress, fear, and anxiety, all these unwanted feelings, emotions. It tells you exactly where it's coming from. Now, it is something so hidden that it was never discovered before. It was discovered in the research of Mr. Hubbard, but it had never been discovered before. It was a brand new discovery, in other words. So this whole subject is just brand new. There's something there that you will not find in any other psychology book. So I'm going to give you a very simplified example, how it could be. So imagine at some point, let's say Joe, let's see if I can take a marker here. Let me just wipe out, make some space. Let's say that's Joe, yeah? That's Joe. So Joe, many years ago, he walked into a dark alley. He walked into a dark alley, and all of a sudden he feels a tremendous pain. He passes out. He wakes up in blood and in pain. He's checking himself, and he sees that his wallet is gone. His jewelry is gone. His watch is gone. He realizes he's been mugged. Let's say these memories, these recordings are somewhere buried in the mind. Now, obviously, Joe is in pain. He's in pain and he is afraid. All right? So, as we just went over in the beginning of the webinar, these images, these are mental. They're not physical. You don't have photos made of them. You don't carry them around on a hard drive. These are like, things in space. Mental stuff. You can't touch it. It's not tangible. Right. So you got millions of these pictures in your mind. You just have them with you all the time. You're not consciously aware of them because you cannot focus, put your attention on all these millions of pictures, right? You wouldn't do that. It would drive you insane. All right, so Joe's got these memories of some time back. Maybe all forgotten about it because he also went unconscious. He was hit on the head, went straight unconscious. Okay, so many years later, Joe is going down the road. And he's entering a street that changes into an alley and gradually becomes like a twilight, dark kind of alley. So at that moment, what do you think Joe's mind is going to do? Joe is just walking into a dark alley. What is Joe's mind going to do? Halima, all right, be scared. That's a good answer. Anybody else? By the way, Pavel, do you have the link? That's extremely cautious. Halima, think of the worst case scenario. All right? Igor says an automatic reaction. Okay, guys. Nan says past memories. So what is going to happen here? You guys have it all right. What is going to happen here is that incident, it contains force. The hit in the head, it is registered. It contains force. It contains pain. The emotion has been recorded. Even while Joe was fully unconscious, that's the worst part, because the recording just went on while Joe was unconscious. Somebody might just have been around during that moment when Joe was actually unconscious. And the person says, poor guy, he will never recover from this. Or, poor guy, from now on, he will always live in fear. Now he's got something there recorded that from there on out will actually affect his entire future, the rest of his life. So where does the mind make mistakes? It says, oh, hang on, here's an alley, and this alley, well, there was an alley there, so they must be the same, so now I have to be very afraid, and I should feel some pain in my head right now as a signal that Joe better make a U-turn and walk away. In other words, there's a protective mechanism in the mind that tells you, get the F away from there. But it's going to enforce that with pain. Joe is going to feel a painful kind of sensation where he was hit. He's going to be very frightened. And he might have all kinds of funny things going on as just discussed. Something there takes over his control and he can no longer think logically or rationally. Like you guys said before, it's a fight or flight type of situation. However, this is where the mind makes mistakes, because that alley is not this alley. Likewise, when you are afraid to talk with your boss, your mind says, uh-oh, your boss resembles somebody else that gave you trouble, so you better not talk to your boss. When you want to do a talk in front of a group of people, your mind says, uh-oh, these people are dangerous. You cannot talk to them because they resemble something else that was recorded in your mind. Now, if you look at, let me ask you this question. Are there certain people that make you feel uncomfortable? Like a boss, like a superior, like a certain customer, like a colleague? Or are there locations that make you feel uncomfortable? Like a recruitment office, or like a school, or like a dentist practice, or like a doctor's practice, or a hospital? Or are there any circumstances, any kind of situations that make you feel uncomfortable? So that's just choose one of the three. Are there any people that make you feel uncomfortable, or locations that make you feel uncomfortable, or situations that make you feel uncomfortable? Have you seen it in your life? Halima, yes. Doctors. All right, yes, Halima. Kyle, doctors. Debs, yeah. Good. All right. So you can see that if you would rationally look at these situations, if you would rationally look at it, you could probably say, hey, there's something there that holds me back, that makes me imagine that something really bad is going to happen. And for that reason, I can't do it. Right? So, there you have the reason, the mechanism. We can go in deeper, but we're going to stick to 1 hour. But there is a mechanism that is sabotaging your memory and your body and completely limiting your potential. That mechanism is that there's something stored, something hidden in your mind that just kicks in every time when something happens. Like you cannot really handle certain individuals or certain spaces or certain circumstances. And what does it do? It limits your potential to less than 10%. Have you ever heard that we only use like 10% of our potential? Well, that means that you're not using 90% of your potential. And it's even worse, because the 90% of the potential is actually not working for you, but just tries to prevent you to talk to your boss, to talk to a customer, to pick up the phone, to see a doctor, to do an exam, to speak in public, and just go on endlessly. It's preventing you from being what you want to be. It's preventing you from doing what you want to do. It's preventing you what you want to have. And all of that is actually perfectly explained in that book, Dianetics, The Modern Science of Mental Health, and actually how to fix it, get it out of your system. And by out, I mean out forever, for good, gone. Your IQ will go up, your confidence will go up, your abilities will go up. How's the book organized? Basically, it's quite a unique book. You have a glossary in the back, which is, so to speak, it's your own dictionary. It's a book that has its own dictionary. Makes it very, very easy. And the first 200 pages is all about your mind. And then the second part is all about the therapy, the method. How do you actually get rid of that stuff that holds you back? All right, guys, that is my talk for tonight. I hope you liked it. For anybody who is interested in that book, we have free shipping in Europe. It's a 20 euro book. I read it 4 times myself, so I know it pretty well. But every time when I read it, I'm like, gosh, I should read it again. This is amazing. This is amazing. And when you actually do the therapy, that is actually when you start to see the real change in you. All right, good. So Kyle says here, the best advice I can give anyone is to never go past a word you do not understand. That's true, Kyle. That's why you have the glossary in the back. All right, guys. Now, so we're coming to the end of the webinar. Is there any questions? Is there anything that you want to ask me personally? Or anything hey, Erik, can I have a chat with you? I'm running into certain situations. I'm running into certain, whatever in life. And I'm looking for some solutions. I'd be happy to have a chat with you. Honestly, I love that. Okay, did you learn something tonight? Did you get something out of this? Okay, good. Halima, thank you for this. Can this link with learning disability? Like dyslexia? Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. So there are certain things in there that just twist things, mix things up. And Is your mind doing certain things to you? Now, fortunately, the mind is no longer a mystery. It's no longer a riddle. You can actually start to understand your own mind, just like a mechanic can understand cars and engines. So you can understand your mind, and you can actually get that completely handled. All right, Debs, you're most welcome. Guys, you were great tonight. You're absolutely great with all your input. We had a very, very intimate setting, very, very small. Like 6 of you. Maybe we're just a group of 6, 7, 8 people tonight. Lovely. Everybody was participating in the chat. It was great. I had a great time. Next week, we're going to be back again on Tuesday. Remember, Tuesday is always from 8 to 9, and Wednesdays is always from 7 to 8. So if you click on the next webinar, you can also leave a comment, and we're always happy with that because that helps us to make known what we do. Guys, thank you so much again. It was great having you. I hope you have a great rest of your evening. I hope you have some stuff to think about, and maybe that is going to take you to your next step and start on your own path of self-discovery and self-improvement in life. Best of luck. Bye for now.